Have you noticed something strange lately? You want to pray. You know you need God. But the moment you try to pray, your mind suddenly feels exhausted. Your phone becomes more interesting. Your thoughts become louder. And somehow, prayer feels harder than ever before. A few years ago, you felt connected, peaceful, spiritually alive. Now, even 2 minutes of prayer feels like a battle. And here's the terrifying part. This didn't happen overnight. Most people don't wake up one day and decide to drift away from God. It happens slowly, through small habits nobody talks about, silent distractions, hidden guilt, constant noise, emotional exhaustion. Little by little, they disconnect your heart from prayer without you even realizing it. But what if the real reason you don't feel like praying anymore has nothing to do with laziness? What if there are spiritual habits secretly draining your soul every single day? In this video, we're exposing the 5 dangerous habits destroying your prayer life right now. And trust me, habit number 5 is the one almost everyone ignores, but it may be affecting you the most. Look, if you've ever picked up your phone instead of praying, if you've ever whispered, "I'll do it later," and later never came, or if prayer feels empty, forced, and emotionally distant lately, then this message is for you. And listen carefully. This does not mean you're weak. It does not mean God abandoned you. Sometimes the biggest spiritual battles don't happen all at once. They happen slowly, one distraction at a time, one compromise at a time, one exhausted night at a time, until suddenly the connection you once felt with God starts fading, and most people never even realize why. Today, we're exposing the 5 silent habits secretly destroying your prayer life, draining your peace, stealing your focus, and disconnecting your heart spiritually. But this video isn't about guilt, it's about awakening, because prayer is more than a religious habit. It's where anxiety loses power. It's where strength returns. It's where broken people find peace again. And before this video ends, you may finally understand what's been pulling you away from God this whole time. So don't skip this. Let's begin. You finally decide to pray. You sit down, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and suddenly your brain explodes with thoughts, notifications, text messages, Instagram reels, YouTube shorts, work stress, food cravings, random memories from 5 years ago. It's like your mind refuses to stay still. Sound familiar? Here's the scary truth. Modern culture trained us to fear silence. Every free second gets filled with noise, scrolling, watching, refreshing, consuming. We became addicted to constant stimulation, and prayer requires the exact opposite. Stillness, focus, presence. Think about this. If your brain spends all day jumping between 15-second videos and non-stop notifications, how can it suddenly slow down long enough to connect with God? It can't. That's why so many people say, "I want to pray, but I can't focus anymore." But maybe the problem isn't prayer itself. Maybe the problem is what we've been feeding our mind every single day. A distracted lifestyle creates a distracted spirit, and little by little, prayer starts feeling dull, empty, boring, not because God stopped speaking, but because the noise became louder than his voice. Story moment. One guy said he struggled to pray for even 2 minutes without checking his phone. Then one night, his phone battery completely died. No TikTok, no music, no scrolling, no distractions. And for the first time in months, he sat quietly in silence. You know what happened? He felt peace again, real peace. That moment terrified him because he realized something powerful. His soul wasn't rejecting prayer. His soul was exhausted from constant noise. Pattern interrupt. Let me ask you something honestly. When was the last time you sat alone in silence without touching your phone even once? Yeah, think about that. Now this part is uncomfortable, but it's real. Sometimes the reason you avoid prayer has nothing to do with being busy. Deep inside, you feel guilty, and guilt changes everything. You still believe in God. You still want peace. But something inside whispers, after what you did, how can you even pray? That's what hidden sin does. Not because God stops loving you, but because shame makes you hide from him, just like Adam and Eve. The moment they sinned, they ran away and hid. And people still do the exact same thing today. Maybe it's lust nobody knows about. Maybe it's lying. Maybe it's addiction. Maybe it's anger, pride, jealousy, or secret habits you keep repeating. At first it feels harmless, but slowly it drains your spiritual energy, because sin always promises relief, but leaves emptiness afterward. Story. Moment. A young man once admitted, "Every night I wanted to pray, but I kept falling into the same addiction." After a while, he stopped praying completely, not because he stopped believing in God, but because shame convinced him, God is probably tired of hearing from me. And that right there is the enemy's biggest lie. Listen carefully. Prayer is not for perfect people. Prayer is where broken people recover. You don't clean yourself first and then go to God. You go to God, so he can begin changing you. That changes everything. Pattern interrupt. And let me ask you something honestly. What if the very thing you're hiding in darkness is the exact thing God wants to heal the most? Think about that. Be honest for a second. How many people suddenly become spiritual when life starts falling apart? The moment stress hits, prayer becomes urgent. Before the exam, after the breakup, during financial pressure, at the hospital, in sleepless nights, suddenly people pray harder than ever before. But then something dangerous happens. The situation improves, and prayer slowly disappears again. That creates a cycle most people never notice. God becomes an emergency contact instead of a daily relationship. Think about it like this. Imagine having a friend who only calls when they need help, money, or favors. Eventually, the relationship would feel one-sided, and sometimes, without realizing it, we treat God the exact same way. But prayer was never supposed to be panic mode only. Prayer is relationship, daily connection, honest conversations, quiet moments, gratitude, trust, not just crisis management. Story. Moment. There was a woman who went through one of the hardest seasons of her life. Every single night she prayed with tears, and during that painful season, she felt incredibly close to God. But months later, life improved. The pain faded, the stress disappeared, and slowly, her prayer life disappeared too. One day, she admitted something heartbreaking. I actually miss how close I felt to God during my struggle. That hits deep, because sometimes pain pushes us toward God, but comfort slowly pulls us away. Pattern interrupt. So let me ask you something honestly. If God solved every problem in your life tonight, would you still seek him tomorrow morning? Because that question reveals whether we truly love God or only love what he can fix. This next habit is dangerous because it doesn't look dangerous at all. It actually looks motivational. You scroll online and see people praying passionately, reading scripture every morning, speaking with confidence, posting powerful spiritual content. And at first, you feel inspired. But after a while, something changes. You start comparing your spiritual life to theirs. Suddenly you think, my prayers sound weak. I'm not spiritual enough. God probably listens to people like them, not me. And slowly, insecurity replaces connection. Listen carefully to this. God never asked you to perform. He asked you to be real. Some people can pray beautifully for 30 minutes and still have a disconnected heart. Meanwhile, Someone else whispers through tears, God, I need you. And heaven hears every word. That's powerful. Comparison destroys authenticity, because instead of talking honestly to God, you start trying to sound spiritual. You filter your emotions, hide your struggles, fake your prayers. But the deepest prayers are rarely polished. They're messy, emotional, raw, honest. Story moment. One teenager admitted, I stopped praying out loud because everybody else sounded more spiritual than me. But later, he realized something life-changing. God wasn't grading vocabulary. God was listening to sincerity, and that changed everything. Pattern interrupt. So stop trying to impress God with perfect words. He already knows every fear, every mistake, every thought inside your mind anyway. What he wants is the real you. Now we reach the deepest reason of all, the reason most people never talk about openly. Sometimes you don't feel like praying, not because you stopped loving God, but because your soul is exhausted, not lazy, not evil, just tired, emotionally drained from life, mentally overwhelmed by pressure, spiritually numb from carrying too much for too long. And the terrifying part is, many people look completely fine on the outside while silently falling apart inside. They smile in public, laugh with friends, go to work, post online, but deep down, they feel disconnected from peace, from purpose, even from God. You wake up tired, go to sleep tired, overthink constantly, and eventually prayer starts feeling impossible because exhausted hearts struggle to reach for anything. But listen carefully to this. Sometimes the enemy doesn't need to destroy your life instantly. Sometimes the goal is simply to keep you spiritually exhausted long enough to drift away slowly, because tired souls stop fighting, tired souls stop hoping, tired souls stop praying, and little by little, distance from God begins to feel normal. That's why protecting your spiritual peace is not optional, it's survival. But here's the truth most people never realize. God is not waiting for a perfect version of you before listening. You don't need more energy. You don't need fancy words. You don't need to fix yourself first. You just need honesty, because even a weak prayer still reaches heaven. Even a broken whisper matters to God. Even silent tears can become prayer. Even sitting there saying, God, I'm struggling, is enough to begin reconnecting again. That's powerful. And maybe, just maybe, the reason this video found you today isn't random at all. Maybe after months of feeling numb, distracted, distant, exhausted, a small part of your soul is finally waking up again. That feeling pulling at your heart right now, that sudden desire to pray again, that's not coincidence. That's your spirit fighting to reconnect before it drifts too far away. And here's the beautiful part. The moment you take one step back toward God, you'll realize He never stopped reaching toward you the entire time. So let's remember the 5 silent habits destroying your prayer life. Constant distraction, hidden sin and guilt, only praying during hard times, comparing yourself to others, and spiritual exhaustion. None of these destroy your connection with God instantly. They do it slowly, quietly, almost invisibly, one distraction at a time, one excuse at a time, one delayed prayer at a time, until one day you suddenly feel far from God and don't even know why. But here's the hope. It's never too late to reconnect. Not next month, not after you fix your life, not when you become perfect. Right now. Start small, because even 2 honest minutes with God can begin changing your entire direction. Prayer was never about sounding religious or impressive. It's about opening your heart honestly. So tonight, before you scroll for another hour, before the noise takes over again, sit quietly for a moment, take a deep breath, and simply whisper, God, I'm here. No performance, no fake words, just honesty, and that small moment could become the beginning of a completely new spiritual life. If this video touched your heart even a little, don't scroll away from that feeling. Hit the like button so this message can reach someone else who feels spiritually tired and disconnected right now. Subscribe for more powerful faith-based videos that help you grow closer to God in a real and honest way. And in the comments, type one word, reconnect. Because sometimes one small step toward God can completely change the direction of your life. And remember this tonight. God didn't walk away from you, maybe through all the noise, pain, and distractions. He's been waiting patiently for you to come back home.